Hey everybody, welcome to Fatso Radio, episode number 72. How you doing? No, that's not gonna work. Maybe it will work. I'm gonna keep it in there. Folks, this episode of Fatso Radio is brought to you by Volpe Martial Arts, like every episode. Volpe Martial Arts, that's volpemartialarts.com for more details. But Volpe Martial Arts is the hottest, newest Kung Fu and Hapkido martial arts school in the KW region. That's right, Kung Fu and Hapkido, awesome fusion, awesome seafood. Seafood Adam Volpe, that's my brother. Check it out. There's a 2-week free trial going on all the time. Check it out. He's doing virtual classes right now. Next week, I believe, or the week, next week, we're going to get back into the training floor. We'll work outside when we can, when the weather's great. Check it out, openmartialarts.com. Also, this episode is brought to you by Papa Earth, papaearth.ca. Check them out and take a look. Use code word FATSOMEAT to save yourself $10 off a small box or $20 off a large box. Folks, this episode is, again, show you who my sponsor. I told you my sponsors are, but this episode is with Mike Brancatelli. I'm really excited to share with you this episode. I had a great discussion with Mike. Mike is the guy behind Mikeadelic. It's a podcast, a website. Mike's been doing this for a long time. He knows psychedelics. He knows podcasting. Shares a lot of information, a lot of cool information and cool stories with me. And we have a good, honest chat about psychedelics. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, folks. We're talking a lot more about things like this in episodes to come. So I hope you enjoy it. Show Mike some love. He was very gracious with his time and with his love with me. Thank you, folks. Episode number 72. Check it out. Lily, take it away.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
So get your butt and get in your chair.
Don't eat your nails and don't pull your hair.
We'll talk about chicken or talk about steak.
We'll talk about fat, for goodness sake.
Fatso, the really great podcast show.
Fatso, our very first podcast show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Fatso Radio, episode number 72. And tonight, I have another special guest, Mike Brancatelli. Mike, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Carlo. Appreciate it. Really loving the background that you got there, Fatso Radio. It looks great. I see it's in this kind of meat and bone configuration, which is really excellent. Absolutely. And I'm trying to match your level of coolness with my virtual background, but my head is kind of half in, half out, so we'll see. Well, but yeah, thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. And I'll just kind of give my listeners or my viewers a little bit of background. But you host the website, of course, and the podcast, Mikeadelic, which is where I found you. I found you from Chris Ryan as well. His podcast, Tangentially Speaking, awesome podcast. He's got the book, Sex at Dawn. But if you can, Mike, just kind of give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of background of yourself, even like if you want to, where you're from and everything, and kind of what got you to where you're doing right now, and then of course explain what you're doing, and then I have some questions for you, I hope.
Yeah, sure, of course. Well,
thanks so much.
I'm from New York originally. I live in Denver now. I grew up just right outside of New York City area, and let's see. I got into, after college, I moved to New York City, lived in New York City for a little while, got into stand-up comedy, podcasting, was walking dogs during the day, picking up turds and but having a good time. And I was doing a political show actually with a friend of mine, Dave Smith, who's a comedian, podcaster. And around the same time, I just started like exploring with psychedelics and, listening to a lot of different podcasts, Joe Rogan, Duncan Trussell, Chris Ryan, a little bit of Aubrey Marcus as well, and some other people. And was really fascinated, actually, by, being a comedian and listening to Rogan and having those kinds of guests on, being like, oh, wow, like we can have conversations like that. Like it's okay for us, like average, pun intended, Joes to have these conversations where he's talking about, ancient civilizations and stuff with Graham Hancock and people like that. So I was really inspired by that. And then I started Mikeadelic. I had been experimenting with a lot of psychedelics and doing a lot of stuff, and I decided to start Mikeadelic, which would be like a convergence of all of the things that I was learning about, and trying to keep it funny and also interesting, and it's evolved over the years. I've lived in Peru I went to an ayahuasca center and lived in the jungle in the Amazon rainforest for a while. So that changed me a little bit, and that changes the show as I change, the show changes.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, now I'm out here in Denver. I moved here. I helped with the Decriminalize Denver initiative to help
Awesome.
decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms here, and continue to stay involved with initiatives like that. My friend runs the Denver Mushroom Co-op, so yeah, trying to be as involved in things as I can, doing the podcast and that kind of stuff.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. So you've been podcasting for what, almost 10 years now, is that right?
I started in I think February of 2014.
Okay,
So
6 years, yeah. Over
yeah,
six.
and I started Mikeadelic in the spring of 2016.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess one of the first questions I have for you is why psychedelics, right? You were talking about other things in the past, or you said that, okay.
Yeah, it was just my head was.
No problem. But I guess my question is, so why psychedelics? I mean, I know you're interested in other things, of course, as well, but why psychedelics specifically? Is there something that you think is unique about it, or
Yeah.
about them, really?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, well, for me, I always felt like there was something more that was going on in reality. And as I kind of alluded to, like, my background, I grew up in a suburban town just right outside of New York City. And, occasionally we'd go into the city and be fascinated by, how city life is. But suburban life was kind of um, insulated, you know, and so there wasn't too much weird stuff, not too much outside of the box stuff, but I always kind of felt that inclination. So when I found psychedelics, I finally found like I found something that I was looking for, or that I found this thing that confirmed in me, like, yes, go deeper down the rabbit hole, this
Yeah.
is your introduction. And the thing that I like about psychedelics the most is that, well, they're fun and you can have fun with people, and you can do them for serious, deep work. And they tend to get rid of bullshit. They're great, like, bullshit cleansing devices.
Yeah.
They're good BCDs. I just made that up.
There you go.
But yeah, just wipes the slate clean with a lot of, maybe shit that you've been telling yourself, like, oh yeah, I ate good today. I did good. I only had this and that. And then you take some psychedelics, you're like, oh my God, yeah, my diet is terrible. Like I've been fucking lying to myself. So
Yeah.
they're real good revealers of truth.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I've heard other people say it too. It's like that truth serum, because it's like we hide every day the bullshit. Like you said, we know what's going on. We know our hang-ups. We know our shit, but we just push it back. And something like this, like, hey, buddy, it's time to deal with it, right? And I think that's what's
Yeah.
terrifying for people. It's when people say the ego death, or people, for a lot of people experience it in many different ways. But I think for a lot of people, maybe, I'm suspecting, but maybe ego death is just really confronting anything that's difficult for them. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think about that? Is that hard? Why is that hard for people?
I think it's hard because, it's always really challenging when you're hiking, you're hiking through the forest and you've been used to walking on this hard surface the whole time. And then all of a sudden you step in a patch of leaves and there's a huge hole and you fall into a pit, and that's a challenging experience because it's unexpected, but it happened and now you're there. And what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And it's sort of the reality of the situation. So I think it's always really, really challenging when we're confronted with our notions of how we think we are in the world and how the world is. And when that's challenged, it can be scary. It's scary. It's scary to, even when you're dealing with people, you think somebody is a certain way, and then all of a sudden they turn out to be another way. That's a challenging situation. So I think that's our ego needs to sort of construct these frameworks so we can have a rigid foundation to understand the world, or at least a solid foundation to understand the world. So then when that gets shaken, it can be very challenging.
So would you say then that the reason why we have this foundation or understanding is because otherwise the world is just too chaotic, I think,
Yeah.
right? And we have to sort of make sense of it. And you're right. Then so something like ayahuasca, or something like psilocybin, even or even for some people something like marijuana, right?
Sure.
can really have the effect where you're just shaking your whole world, and say, holy shit, one of the things that I've noticed when I did psilocybin, I've only had a fairly good trip one time, really. I did microdosing, which I want to talk to you about too. But one of the
Sure.
first things I noticed when I did psilocybin was it's so funny, but it's almost the of course feeling of, oh, we're all connected. It's of course we're all connected. But it's so silly that I felt like it was of course. It's like, wow, I get what every stoner was saying their whole life, or every hippie was saying their whole life. But it's funny. It's one of the first things I felt was, oh, you silly goose. Of course we're connected. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such a perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
It's like, and then after that, anytime anybody's ever said we're connected, or, when you read it in media or everything, you're just like, yeah, it's second nature. But I guess my question is that for people who haven't experienced that, when they say that we're all connected, I wonder if they're feeling what I'm feeling and you're feeling,
I'd guess. Yeah.
I wonder. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if they haven't experienced the psychedelic experience, then maybe not. Maybe they're just hoping. I guess maybe like religious people hope sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if they have experienced it, I guess, that connectedness, it's weird. What is it? I mean,
I think it's a sense of seeing yourself in the other,
okay.
I think it's a sense of, even as we're starting this conversation now, I'm getting a sort of a familiarity with you. I just
Okay.
met you,
Yeah.
but I feel like, I don't know, maybe you sort of have some characteristics or traits of people that I knew, that I grew up with, old friends, something like that,
I see what you mean.
Oh, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book about this, like the blink judgments. So we look at people and we judge and we blink everything up for, biologically, survival reasons. And so it's like, oh yeah, he's wearing a hat. Oh, I have hats. So he looks familiar, it's like that sort of thing. Yeah, something like, that sounds silly, but it's like, yeah, I think that feeling of being connected, I think is that acknowledgement of the lived human experience that peers out of our eyes and our sensory input is also alive in others as well. And so if we have that, then others have that, that Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am, feel it, it's like I am and I think, and others, I don't know for certain that others are doing it, but certainly under a psychedelic, you definitely get the felt sense that that's true.
Exactly. And you're
Because
certainly
we could never inhabit another person's consciousness,
Well, exactly.
So
And it's certainly in a place where you feel comfortable saying that, because if you can experience it, you can easily imagine that someone else can experience it, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I
I think
guess.
it would be a safe bet to say, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Huh, interesting. So it leads me to my next question then, because it seems like in a lot of different circles, I mean, although sometimes you surround yourself with the circles you want to, right? But it seems like there's a bit of a psychedelic renaissance coming. And maybe it's been coming for the last 50 years, I don't know. But I feel like I've been tuning into it in the last 10 or 15 years. And it really feels like it's coming more and more. Things like MAPS and these organizations are really working. It's not just an illusion, right? Is it increasing? Like, do you feel it? Does everybody feel it? Like, what do you?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question, because sometimes when you're really deep entrenched within a particular subculture, that you don't really realize how fast it's moving or how mainstream it's getting, right? So I think that yeah, it's definitely picking up steam, and it's definitely, to talk openly about psychedelics and psychedelic experiences, and to have prestigious universities and prestigious authors writing books about them, best-selling books and things like that. It's definitely a good time to be alive, I think, in terms of that era of progress being made. Yeah.
It's good, and I'm happy to see it as well. I mean, in a lot of ways, it seems like it's almost riding the coattails of the cannabis train, right? It's being legalized, and it's great, and maybe it's a gateway drug. Maybe
turns out it really is a gateway drug, right?
Which we're okay with that. That's cool for sure. But it's funny because, like, I know for me, I started questioning things when I got introduced to pot, right, years ago, and it was like almost like a recreational questioning. You question it once in a while, but I wasn't that involved with it, so I wasn't really questioning the whole world. But then as life goes on, and you get married, or you have kids, and you have a house, and these things happen, you start questioning more. But when I had when I experienced psychedelics, it really made me question things so much more. And for me, I think it was almost the perfect timing, because this is where I think it might fit in with the whole Fatso radio, because one of the main themes on Fatso radio is, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, that we were wrong about dietary fat, and we were wrong that fat made you fat. It turns out that sugar really is the problem for most people, right?
Yeah.
But that got me questioning, and that really, at the same time, got me questioning about drugs and about psychedelics and everything else. And I'm like, wait a second, what else are we wrong about, right? Or what else are we misled about? And for psychedelics, it's a no-brainer for me now, because I'm like, where's the harm, right? It's as far as my research goes, it's among the least amount, or sorry, one of the least dangerous things you can do, really, right? You know, the LD50 on psilocybin is through the roof, right? So I wonder if, like, I don't know, I wonder if is it the door to something else, or I don't know, you know what I'm getting at? Like, it's,
Yeah. I can sort of take a leap
yeah,
over there. Where I hope it's going is back to where we started, in a way, you know. And I'm not like, you know, a Luddite that's saying that we're going to go back to living in, you know, I want everyone to go back to living in caves. But like, I think the failure of every civilization, empire that's come before ours, and I'm talking about that in those terms, because as individuals, we're part of this larger thing. So in the larger scheme of things, they've all failed. You know, that's why we're here, is because they've failed. You know, otherwise we'd be, you know, this would be, we'd be under the Ottoman rule or whatever. You know, I don't know,
yeah, for sure.
but
Like
or Roman,
civilization.
Roman rule or something.
I
But
think we'd do okay under with our last names.
yeah, we'd be fine. I think we'd be fine. Yeah, we'd probably be kings. That'd be nice. But I think there's a reason why, and it's because there's a inability to have a balance to things. There's an author that I like, or I don't even know if he's an author. I don't think he's written a book, but he writes a blog, and he talks about, his name's Daniel Schmachtenberger. He talks about the civilization being a self-terminating civilization, because we have rivalrous games mixed with exponential tech, which equals we're going to blow ourselves up. So where I would like to see is like psychedelics, you know, keto, like more of the things that serve us fully to be human beings, thriving, strong, fit, aligned, clear human beings. And then utilizing the cool technology that we have that will serve us. And as Douglas Rushkoff likes to say, is like, to be a part of Team Human. You know, we don't want we don't want to be slaves to technology. We want technology to work for us. And I think I would like to see psychedelics expand that horizon a little bit more, and, you know, giving people like, oh, maybe we should look into like permaculture more. Maybe we should look more into, you know, local, organic, grow your own food, that kind of thing. And take some of these hunter-gatherer type of principles and put them into this modern equation with technology, and try and, you know, balance it out, and also balance our consciousness out too. Because if we're riding this wave of exponential tech and sending rockets into space and going to Mars, I mean, I don't think that we have the our egos haven't been tampered enough yet on a societal level to allow for a balance and a harmony. To, you know, it's one thing to build a gun. It's another thing to know when to use it, how to use it. You know, that's where I'm getting at with that. So yeah, that's where I'd like to see it go. Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, it's times like this is when you know, times during the whole pandemic and the lockdowns and everything, and at times like this when people are like, let's go back to where's food made, where's your farmer, where you grow those animals and things like that. And it's almost like the perfect timing that keto and the carnivore movement and all this stuff is like you were saying about psychedelics. It's kind of like removing the bullshit too, right? It's like, okay, let's go back to our old way. But for many things, we figured out that going back to the old way with food is probably the best. Going back to the old way with medicine is probably better too, in a lot of ways, you know, natural kind of holistic kind of things. But like you said, marry that old way of life that actually got us here with the modern technology, because the modern technology is hurting us in a lot of ways, right? It's making us sick. Well, at least the technology from food is making us sick.
Sure.
So,
oh yeah, big time problem.
So I mean, you know, I heard this one quote once that said, human beings are the only animals smart enough to make their own food and stupid enough to eat it. So, which is great. I don't even know who said that, but it's
That's
brilliant.
perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect. That's exactly it. We're so clever.
Yeah.
We're able to ponder and contemplate infinite, abstractions in our minds, and we think we're so clever
Yeah.
that we've built this sort of machine that's on autopilot that just keeps ratcheting out, all the corn syrup and the yellow 5 and whatever, all the packaged stuff, and it's fun and it's good, but it's like it's killing us. It's making a lot of people sick. So
Sure.
I think there's a balance in there somewhere,
Yeah.
that we can find.
I think as well, like one of the things that I tend to think about is, so one of the things that bothers me about the whole craziness of the world is just the idea of go, 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 push, 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 9 to 5. You know what I mean? The rat race, the whole go, go. I think that I haven't met anybody who is a fan of psychedelics or is even open to psychedelics who also still believes that we're meant to we're put on this earth to work. So you know what I mean by that? Like
Yeah.
I wonder if part of the part of the solution, or I guess part of the mission, is to maybe get psychedelics out there or expand the people's ideas about psychedelics, and maybe it'll get the idea of you know what I mean, like that you're not a lazy hippie, you're not a lazy bum, rather, right? If you're into psychedelics, rather you're into evolving your brain,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then because the drugs for a long time has been kind of set aside to the losers, the lazies, the whatever.
Sure.
But I don't know, maybe Silicon Valley is our hope for the whole micro dosing and things like that. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like,
Yeah, I think it's tricky. I think that when we have what we have now, with psychedelics in America, it's everything molds to the shape of the container that it's poured into, and psychedelics is being poured into a crony, capitalist, statist, authoritarian, oligarchic container. And
yeah,
that it's like, yeah, cool, psychedelics are becoming mainstream. Yeah, cool, like, people at Google are going to Burning Man and taking acid and having, inventing new apps and stuff. But I don't think, for me, the goal of psychedelics is to be more efficient within the machine.
good point.
It's I don't like I see psychedelics as a tool for liberation, into a diverse array of new ways of doing things, and new organizations and new networks and things that we haven't even thought of before.
Yeah,
People like to talk about capitalism, socialism, this ism, that ism. It's like, maybe there's something that we don't even know about. I bet there is.
for sure.
And
There has to be.
yeah. And so when psychedelics get plugged into the matrix, so to speak, then it takes on the qualities of the matrix, and that I'm not too crazy about. I definitely appreciate, and I definitely think that for me, and I think a lot of human beings would feel a lot more at ease if they had a little bit less demands put on them to keep running on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and one of the things that I think about all often is things like, just big pie in the sky type of things where life, if people didn't have to work, of course, right? If people didn't have to slave their way through the day to make ends meet and to put food on the table for their kids, then the world would be a different place, of course. There wouldn't be a lot less crime. I mean, my understanding is crime, breeds, or sorry, poverty breeds a lot of crime, and so on and so on. So I think with more psychedelics, the world would be, of course, more a peaceful place, of course. But how, I feel like oftentimes people say we'll need something to get us there, right? We'll need a catastrophe, or we need a global pandemic, or we'll need something. And it's like, I don't know, is this going to kick us a little further? Is this pandemic, you think, something that's kicking us further in that way? I don't know. These are tough questions for me.
No, it's just a lot. It's like I'm trying not to take up 3 hours to talk about this. But yes, I would like to believe so. I would like to believe so, because I think that the only way that people make changes is when shit really gets real. When you're really affected, when shit hits the fan. People talk about systemic change and things like that, and it's like, yeah, why haven't we had it? Why are we doing a lot of things that we do don't make sense? Well, it's like, well, I don't know, why didn't I pay my credit card bill on time? Because most people don't. Like most people, a lot of people wait until shit gets really bad and then they start making changes. Or, maybe something that you can relate to is like you wait until you're like
Absolutely.
ballooned up. I mean, yeah, I used to
Yeah.
be a little bit heavier and I was like, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, how am I tipping the scale at this number right now? This is crazy. And
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I didn't realize that. Like, I got to make changes like now, and so, yeah, I would hope that that you know that this would be a wake up call, or that we're in the midst of a wake up call. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said about the whole, you get to a point where you're in a health crisis yourself, right? Or a personal crisis. And that it did perfect example to me. Like I got to 330 pounds, right?
Oh
I'm
wow.
under 6 feet and I wasn't meant to be that big, right?
Wow.
So
Wow.
I've lost over 120 pounds, but like
Amazing.
thank you. But that's the point. Like you get to a point where like, holy shit, am I going to live? Am I going to die? I got kids, you know what I mean? Like, and
Right.
then, yeah, you make a change. And I wonder, I hate this feeling that, or I get this feeling that there is this change going through, like people, it's rolling through the population, right? I feel like friends of mine, family of mine, even people that I've never would have expected to, be interested in even marijuana these days or psychedelics, or even just without being any of the psychedelics, just interested in more of the conscious, open-minded kind of stuff. So I feel it. And maybe, something like the pandemic or the lockdown has given us more time to think, more time with our families, good and bad, more time to fight or whatever. But I do feel like it's coming a little bit, or it's still coming, from our grandparents or whatever. But I feel like it is
Hmm.
rolling along, to say. And
Yeah.
like you said too, like it takes a crisis like this, and I mean the pandemic, or even just like any economic crisis, right, can really give your head a shake, in the world.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Um, no, kind of switch gears, I guess. Well, not switch gears, but another kind of question I had for you was, I've often heard of people said in the past, I'm not sure if it's Ram Dass that said it, but when you get the message and you kind of hang up. You ever heard that kind of expression? That once you get
Yeah.
the
Alan
ability to,
Watts. Yeah.
Alan Watts, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? 'Cause I don't really like it, but at the same time, maybe I haven't heard the right message.
Hmm.
So,
Well, my interpretation of it is, he's talking about psychedelics, and he's basically saying like, when you have a psychedelic experience and there's a message being conveyed to you within that experience, well, then it's time to, after the psychedelic experience is over, you hang up your phone and you go about doing things. Maybe you spoke with someone on the phone. They're like, yeah, you got to fill out these forms and take them into the DMV. And oh, okay, thanks. I got the message. You hang up the phone, then you do the work. And so
okay.
in that aspect of it, in my interpretation of what he's saying there, it's because I've been in situations where I've just been going in,
Sure.
and I've had experiences where the uh, entities or the communication from the psychedelic
Yeah.
is telling me, hey man, what do you think this is? You just come in here to like party. You've seen a lot of stuff. We showed you a lot of stuff. You didn't do your homework and you're coming back, and it's like, oh, okay, I
Okay.
got to actually do shit in the real world and then come back, and then maybe hopefully I'll get an A on the test.
Gotcha. So your interpretation is that it's like, make sure you do your homework, or your assignment given or something. Really
Yeah, if you're going in on psychedelic
interesting.
experience and you get a message that's,
Okay.
if you get a message that you feel like is uh resonating with you about your life,
Mhm.
then it's time to kind of hang up the phone, which means don't do any more psychedelics until you start taking action on those things and
Gotcha.
you put them into the world. Yeah,
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And then, I mean, theoretically, down the road, I mean, you may need another session to pick up the phone
sure,
again for more help, for more. Ah, gotcha,
exactly.
gotcha.
Yeah, call operator again. Yeah,
Yeah, and 411 for information.
yes, yes, yes.
Wow, and that's funny because people say they get downloaded, right? That makes a lot of sense. So the
Right.
idea that to do it once and then never go back again, that's almost like a kind of a misunderstanding, that people are saying, like, or maybe not, but I mean, I guess the idea that you would just need it one time, I have a hard time believing that anybody would need anything one time, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it all depends on people's personal preferences,
That's
and
true
it
too.
depends on your life experience and where you're at, and what you've done and what your intention is and what you want to get out of it. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. I keep going back. because I
Yeah.
feel like I have a relationship with psychedelics, and but some people maybe one time, and then they're like, hey, I'm good. I don't know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. So I myself have had one kind of 3.5 gram kind of psilocybin experience. That was kind of the one time that I had. It was a few years back now, and then I kind of microdosed for a couple weeks, which was, I did about a half a gram, which some people are saying is too much, but I did a half a gram. I'm a big guy. Every couple of days for about a week I did, or 2 weeks I did that. Two completely different experiences, of course. My one experience where I did 3.5 grams, very all, kind of what you see or what you kind of hear about the pastel colors, very altered kind of space. And the second experience with the microdosing, it was very interesting for me. The second experience was, for the most part, it was a general sense of calmness and happy, but I was drawn outside. I was drawn outside to go walking. And that so about 2 weeks of doing that, or within the first day even, I was drawn outside. I started walking a regular path of walking every single day. And that actually started my weight loss. So that was beginning about 100 and some pounds. So when you said get the message, I think I got so many messages through those two experiences that kind of took me on. But yeah, maybe if you can share some of your experiences with, or even just, how much experience do you have with it, to say, kind of give our listeners a perspective. I'm very novice, of course, but open to it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, I don't microdose frequently, but I kind of go through periods of time where I feel like I need microdosing. I suppose I'm affected by the change of weather, seasonal affective disorder, whatever. I'll get a little depressed when the winter starts coming on. So I feel like for me, doing a microdose around then is good, and usually I follow a protocol that was laid out by Dr. James Fadiman in his book, The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide.
Okay.
And it's basically he suggests doing a subperceptual dose, which means you take a really small amount, usually like 0.08 or something like that, or like, just very, very small dose, subperceptual. So you're not getting any of the feelings or anything really, but you're experiencing maybe a slight boost in mood. That's the way that I like to take it, because when I was a kid, I was prescribed Adderall because I couldn't, focus or whatever. And it was horrible. I hated it,
Really?
So I stopped. I didn't really take it so much, but I just didn't like the effects. But Albert Hoffman, the inventor of LSD, said that microdosing LSD would have been would have been the thing instead of Adderall or Ritalin. That it had not been so harshly scheduled as a Schedule I drug. So I like to do it sort of like that. Now you can kind of. I'm also a big believer in like going with what you feel is right and what you feel connected to.
Yeah.
So if that's what you feel you want to do, that's cool, and if that works for you, that works for you. And then I like to do a larger dose in a ceremonial kind of fashion, and I kind of use the ayahuasca ceremonial kind of setup or container to do mushrooms in, and with music. And actually, a guy I had on my podcast, his name's East Forest. He made an album that's called Music for Mushroom Practitioners. It's just like 5.5 hours long. It's amazing. He improv the whole thing.
Really?
He's an extremely talented musician. It's perfect for mushrooms. And so I'll do that like once every season change or quarter, something like that. And it's not so rigid, but whenever I'm feeling like every couple months or something, like, oh, I kind of need to go in big, get defrag my computer.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even growing up, I always had buddies that were into mushrooms who say, twice a year, got to do them. You know what I mean? It's like, it was almost, I don't know if it was just a ritual, it's part of the whole thing, right? It's ritual and ceremony, right? So
yeah, definitely.
Now
There's something important about that. Yeah.
Exactly. Now you mentioned ayahuasca. Do you have similar experiences with ayahuasca and psilocybin? Do you find that they're similar, or do you find that they're different for you?
They're definitely different, but there's definitely some similarities. They're both tryptamines. They're very close chemically in their composition. Ayahuasca yeah, mushrooms and ayahuasca, they definitely have some similarities, but big differences as well.
Okay.
And and it's hard to, they're both hard to pin down. They're both these kind of chaotic tricksters,
Okay.
but they can also be loving. Like ayahuasca can be like loving and tender and beautiful and very earthbound, and mushrooms, in my opinion, tend to be very alien and like far out and cosmic.
Okay.
Yeah, but they both definitely produce like a lot of similar type of effects. And then having said that, they're also wildly different as well.
In their own
Yeah,
ways, yeah.
yeah.
Is ayahuasca something you've kind of experienced recently only, or have you been doing, or have you experienced it for kind of few years now, or
Few years now, yeah,
few years
since
now?
2016, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, my understanding is that you can go to Mexico, you can go to Peru, there's all over. I mean, even now, all over the U.S. and Canada, there's places popping up, and that's a good sign, and as far as I can see, right? I mean, it's, I mean, not to get too much on off topic, but like this is better than all the pharmaceuticals. This is better than all the processed foods. This is better than all the guilt and shaming and saying that we all have problems and all this stuff. So I really like that.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I hear actually I got a question from from my sister regarding kind of the idea that for some people, I'll kind of phrase your question if I hope it's right, but for some people, marijuana and cannabis, which is the same thing, of course, but for a lot of people or some people, it just doesn't do anything for them for many years, or it doesn't do something for them for at least an extended period of time. And then sometimes maybe somebody will take something else, maybe ayahuasca or something, and then kind of maybe now cannabis works, for example. So for example, my sister experienced, and she said that for years she would have tried pot, didn't do anything for ayahuasca experience. Next thing you know, pot is like super, kind of gets her right back there, and even kind of gets her places that ayahuasca gets her without even having ayahuasca. Does that mean that makes sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like in opening up something, or
Definitely. I don't know what it is,
okay,
but I have heard that before. I think I've experienced that before also myself.
okay,
Yeah, I definitely think that, I guess, speaking from sort of like a energetic or
yeah,
psycho spiritual kind of modality, that there's definitely a sort of a clearing that happens, that
okay,
can happen when you take ayahuasca. That's one of the things that is different about ayahuasca and mushrooms, is that the purge effect from
oh,
ayahuasca.
okay,
And I believe it's really important because it really is like this real tangible material representation of clearing. Like you are
wow,
vomiting, you are
okay,
having diarrhea, you are yawning, you're screaming. There's something going on where you're getting rid of anything that's sort of blocking you in an
gotcha,
energetic way within the body. Oftentimes we
okay,
tend to think about the mind and so much, but the body holds a lot of information. The
gotcha.
body, there's this book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's
Ah,
like
interesting.
there's a lot of it. So I would say that maybe something that happened was like some thing that was stuck,
Hmm,
something that was not able to produce an effect by cannabis, was then cleared and removed, and now it's
sure.
fully functioning and activated. It's got, like, you got an oil change, your car's running better now.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a perfect understand. That makes sense to me. And as you're saying that, I was kind of spitballing the idea too of like you said, opening the doors or clearing out. Maybe even clearing out something. Maybe it was an idea that you're clearing out. Like, oh, this
Yeah,
never worked for me before. Maybe that, right? Or maybe ayahuasca kind of would open doors to, like you said, if you're able to have different perceptions for other things, maybe that as well. So I wonder. Interesting. I think that sometimes, I think maybe in the future we'll use psychedelics for learning. I think it's going to be interesting, man.
hmm
It's because if it's the whole neuroplasticity and rewiring the brain, and if it's doing that right, what else can it do? Like, can we plug into the matrix one day, and is it going to be an LSD tab? Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
I
yeah. Maybe
wonder.
we already have.
Maybe we are exactly, and the people. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess, not to take too much of your time, but thanks so much, Mike. I mean, one of the things that I want to get kind of out to people, whether they're into psychedelics or whether they have experience with it or not, is like you said, we were talking about earlier, is just talking about it. And I want to keep on talking about it. I want to let people know that it's safe, right? And maybe you can kind of speak on that too, but it's safe, not only from a physical standpoint, you're not going to do some harm, but even from a a spiritual and mental and intellectual standpoint, I think it's relatively safe. I know a lot of people I've heard over the years, don't do it, you'll fry your brains. 5 hits of acid and you'll end up in a crazy house, things like that, right? And what people are so afraid of, every time I hear someone is afraid and they have a bad trip, almost every time that same person says they've learned from that bad trip and they appreciate that bad trip. So how do we make sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, all good questions, because the psychedelics definitely do pose. They definitely have risks. They definitely do. They're they're very safe. I think like the FDA granted psilocybin mushrooms breakthrough therapy status. It's the least non-toxic of everything, and yeah, there's so many benefits, and there's so many things that are positive and good. And having said that, you have to also be aware of, in case if you have any heart trouble and you're taking heart medication, or yeah, if you're overweight and not in great shape, and maybe have any sort of pre-existing condition that you have, take that into consideration. Ask a couple people, do a little research online, go to great websites like Erowid or the Shroomery, or at different places like that. And then psychologically, there's still people that are interested in doing research on finding out if psychedelics are safe for people with bipolar or with schizophrenia. As of now, it's no. And if you're taking medication for depression or anything like that, a Zoloft or something, they ask that you be off that for like 8 weeks, prior to taking anything. So it's just things like that. If any of that sort of stuff is in your family history, then I would have a little caution, and I would do a little research. It's always about the setting, your mindset. How are you feeling? You're feeling good about this, the setting, your environment. Are you comfortable? Are you safe? And so if those conditions are met and you're healthy and everything checks out, you're good to go. And you're doing one of the safest, one of the most beneficial things that you could do for yourself.
Yeah. It's great to hear as well. Now, what do you say to people that say, well, when you're going in that area, be extra careful, because I've heard that, and I'm not trying to, sorry, and if that sounds, like facetious or whatever, but I've heard it so many times from different people, saying like, hey, careful what you look for when you're in there. And I understand that, of course. I think I understand that. But is that coming from, where is that coming from? Is that coming from a place of love? Is it coming from a place of fear? Is it coming from like a experience, like, holy shit, kid, get ready for this? Like, or yeah.
So you're talking about the psychedelic experience?
Psychedelic experience, when people say, they can have some very terrifying experiences, the ego death and things
right.
like that. Yeah.
Right.
What do you say to people, like, when I hear that people are extra cautious with that, and I wonder how to take that caution. You know what I mean? I wonder, like, what do you want me to do with the caution? Can I go into it being careful? Or is that counterproductive?
Yeah, I think that's counterproductive, because, I mean, of course you want your physical environment to be safe. You don't want to be eating mushrooms while you're hanging out, off the back of a Jeep, going down a mountain with no guardrail,
Right.
whatever. I mean, that kind of sounds fun, but
if Terrence McKenna's driving, I'm in.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, it's I think that, I guess what I find is oftentimes people that say things like that have a little experience, or did it in not the wrong ways, but did it in different ways in which I'm doing it, or other people might be interested in doing it, or maybe they had bad experiences themselves, or because yeah, I mean, like, prior to taking them in more of a conscious and intentional way, I ate mushrooms, I took acid, like when I was in high school,
Sure, as a
and
kid,
and
as a party.
I was just popping them in my face with everything else. And because I didn't have the sort of reverence in the container for it, it was just another drug to, like, get me high. And they can certainly be that, they can certainly be that. So I would say, that, it's not necessarily a good idea. If you have any fear, or if you're around people that are creating fear for you, I wouldn't want to go in under those kinds of conditions. Yeah.
That's a good point. So just in general fear, like, if there's anxiety around this whole thing, if there's people that are around you that aren't into it, I guess, or just Yeah, I can see. Or maybe, if you wouldn't want to do this if you're in a room of four other people and they're all thinking it's a terrible idea for something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You want to be in a safe, supportive,
Yeah.
compassionate, understanding environment for sure. Yeah.
Well, and that speaks to why I think a lot of people are doing the ritual, and it makes sense for a lot of people to do the ritual because, like I said, the ritual is a safe place. It's a controlled environment, right? We're all there for the same purpose, and the set and setting is set. It's kind of constructed in that area, right?
Yeah.
So how can we support each other with this? I mean, how do we spread the word? I mean, other than doing podcasts about it, of course. Psilocybin is one of those things that is still in most places still illegal. Right? You said it's decriminalized in Colorado now?
In Denver.
In
Yeah.
Denver.
Just in
Just
the
Denver itself.
city and county of Denver. Yeah.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
think I'm in Canada here, and I think Canada is probably going to be close to decriminalizing it. I mean, MAPS is doing a lot of work. Dr.
Yeah.
West, I forget his name, Dr. Gabor Matar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Some amazing stuff going on everywhere. But I guess as far as well, even when we get into the last question about kind of like where are we going to go with this, but how do you feel about cannabis, marijuana? Do you think it is a psychedelic, or how does it land on the spectrum? Because some people, especially the edibles, maybe we can get into that. Some people when they eat marijuana, they trip balls. It's funny because edible marijuana doesn't quite do that to me, but other people do. Do you find that marijuana is a psychedelic?
I would say that it can be,
Okay.
but I don't typically view it as that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it does that for somebody, then good for them, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I tend to think of, I mean, outside of the like official definition of what a psychedelic is, but
Sure.
like to me, it's just like if I really feel like I'm being if I'm like in a different realm, a different environment. And so with cannabis, like for me, I feel that it makes me, a lot of the times it makes me more introspective.
Yeah.
And I don't like I would say that it's psychoactive, but I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as a psychedelic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, so many people have different experience with it. When they eat it, produces different effects. When you smoke it,
Yeah.
different things like that. I've even heard people. I mean, Joe Rogan has said over the years that if you eat enough of it, it's like having mushrooms. But I never got to that point eating it, so I don't know. Except for high tolerance, maybe. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's a good question. If you eat enough of it, I guess if we're talking about edibles, there's something yeah, there is a kind of a realm there within. There's an edible realm because I've definitely eaten like 100 milligrams of edible weed and just been landlocked and
Yeah.
in another world. Yeah.
Yeah. So it does something exactly. Yeah,
Definitely, it does
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Interesting.
100%.
For sure. No, are there any other kind of psychedelics that are, I mean, not to give anybody crazy ideas, but are there any other psychedelics that are maybe commonly used or that are maybe not commonly used, but, ayahuasca and psilocybin are probably the most two common that I know of, but yeah, are there any other ones that you know of, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think that LSD, is a big one. I think that I mean, that's a fun one.
Still around, right? You can still find it.
It's still around. Yeah. Thankfully, we have people that are interested in chemistry. So,
Good chemists, I hope.
Yeah, it'll be around. And I guess other psychedelics would be, DMT, smoked DMT, vaporized DMT,
Okay.
5-MeO DMT, otherwise known as Bufo alvarius, which is toad venom.
Oh, yes.
Iboga, which is grows in Africa, is native to Africa, is a very, very powerful psychedelic.
Yeah.
And a couple other ones. What else? Oh, San Pedro, cactus, huachuma. That's a powerful one. Peyote, mescaline.
Yeah. Wow.
So and then there's all kinds of different analogs. There's people that are making their own kinds of things, and some of them are psychedelic, some of them are not, but they're like components of psychedelics, tinkering around with the chemical constructions and creating different kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, where where it's going to go. I suppose as the psychedelics kind of open up and the laws change, we'll see more and more. I hope. I mean, a lot of people, I'm sure, hope out there that psychedelics are going to replace a lot of other therapies, right? A lot of the toxic therapies that are making other people sick. I mean, I've even heard, I forget where I heard it, on the podcast or a book I read, but that they're even thinking about using, or they've tried to use psilocybin for actual medical benefits other than other than like kind of emotional stuff or mental stuff. They're actually knowing it's high in antioxidants and things like that. So it's interesting to see once they kind of change the laws, what it does. But I guess my last question, hopefully it's not too much of a stretch for you, but in my opinion, if we're going to talk to aliens, this might be too much. If we're going to talk to aliens, right, or other beings, if there are other beings, doesn't this seem like the best bet?
Yeah.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not alone, because I think other people are starting to catch up. Well, not starting to, but what do you make of that? I want to hear your thoughts, because
I think that the world is strange, and we don't know a lot. We really don't. There's so much unknown, and I've definitely had experiences where I'm communicating with entities. I can only call them entities. I don't know what to call them. I don't know if it is a them. Maybe it's just some kind of formation of something that I created, but then we're all creating it in that realm. And because we all sort of are collectively creating something in like a paranormal, multi-dimensional psychedelic space, is it quote unquote real or not real? I don't know. But we're getting some kind of information from somewhere, whether it's deep inside of our psyche and our unconscious, and it's being revealed to us in a symbiotic way while ingesting a psychedelic. Cool. Or maybe there's like really these like alien psychedelic beings that live in this dimensional space that we can't possibly like begin to understand with our little mammal minds. So I don't know. I'm open to everything.
I'm open to it too.
Yeah.
It seems like in the ancient writings and religious texts and all these times in the ancient times when they at least it looked like they believed in extraterrestrials or terrestrials. It seems like there were always psychedelics around there too. So I wonder if this is the way they actually communicated. And wouldn't that be funny if all we have to do, not all we have to do, but wouldn't that be funny if all we have to do is take a few grams and we've tuned into the right channel? I wonder. I mean, it's the perfect time, Mike. Wouldn't you agree?
I do agree. And I do think that you said a couple of grams, so you're referring to mushrooms, and I definitely do think that mushrooms are an amazing species. They're not plants, they're not animals. They're their own thing, and they represent they have so much there's so much diversity among them, and healing properties and benefits. And psychedelic mushrooms, I mean, there's definitely something going on in there. We'll just say, there's definitely some kind of something happening. And so I kind of believe in like the Terence McKenna like mushroom panspermia sort of idea, where like these things they can survive in space, so they came from some other planetary star system or something and like seeded on Earth, and they're one of the oldest things, and they're the only psychedelic. I think they're the only psychedelic that you can just pick up and eat. Like, it's not a brew. You don't have to mix it. You don't have to make it. Yeah. You don't have to burn it. You don't have to light it. You don't have to smoke it. You just pick it up out of the ground and just eat it. So
interesting.
It's sort of the oldest one. And like you said, in a lot of these cave paintings and even in religious paintings and things like that, you see a lot of mushroom symbols and symbology. So there's definitely some kind of there's secrets to be found, I think.
Absolutely. And people keep on saying, I downloaded information, I got information, and it's something, and there's information in this food, so I mean, the Terence McKenna, the Stone Ape theory, and that stuff blew my mind, and it's absolutely possible. Why not? I mean, who knows, right? We keep on saying, well, what got us, or what made that evolutionary leap, we know that eating meat was one of the great things, but what gave us the advantage? What gave us that idea even, right? Things like language. Terence McKenna kind of postulated that maybe they tripped balls so bad they just started talking, right?
Yeah,
That's
bet.
one of and who knows what else could happen, you know? And maybe that's how, you know, art and culture and music and everything else started too.
Yeah.
You
Just
know,
like some monkey like a long time ago, like, holy shit, dude. What's coming out of my mouth? I'm saying holy shit, dude. I don't even know what that means. What is this? I'm speaking. Holy shit.
here, try some. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then everybody starts talking.
Yeah, you got to try this shit. Yeah.
Exactly.
That'd be the equivalent of us taking something today that would make us fly,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
But
exactly. It would change everything you believe in, right?
yeah.
And I guess maybe on closing, like I think this, in my opinion, is going to be the solution or one of the solutions for things like world peace. And maybe it's not going to come in 10 years or 20 years, but if I can imagine even in 100 years or 200 years, I personally, I personally see psychedelics there. I see other, you know, mind altering substances there. I think psychedelics specifically are going to be there at the end of the day because they're the safest and you know, they're most beneficial. But I do think that we need to keep on the relationship with psychedelics and in fact, you know, increase that relationship. Do you think it's going to lead to things like world peace? I mean, is that too much pie in the sky?
Hmm. Um, no, I don't think it's too much pie in the sky. I tell you, I could really go for a piece of pie right now. That sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
I haven't had one in a long time. But yeah, I think that as soon as if people can start kind of having those, like you said before, like those, oh, like, you silly goose, like, don't you realize, like, oh golly gee, like, wake up, like, if we can kind of wake up a little bit more and start realizing that everything is connected, right? It's like what you are, what you eat, like, you know, what you put in your body, what you feed your brain, what you feed your mind, what you feed your soul affects how we create our environments that we live in and that we exist in. And that, you know, that psychedelics and altered states of consciousness can help liberate your soul from the machine. And if you're an empowered person, then nothing can stop you, you know. And then we have a bunch of empowered people walking around that are healthy, that are thinking, you know, clearly, that are wanting to engage in, you know, progressive solutions for change. Then I think that we have a chance, you know, because we can shape this thing to be however we want it to be, but we have to shape who we are first. And I think that if more and more people have the opportunity to wake up, to get healthier, to heal, you know, to be active participants in a loving and caring world, then they're going to want to create that. They're going to want to create, you know, once you love yourself, once you love who you see in the mirror, you know, then you want to start, you know, sharing that with other people and creating your environment that fosters that, and that creates opportunities for other people and generations to come, kids and things like that. So I see a potential, I see opportunity for sure for that to be possible. Yeah.
Oh, Mike, I think that's perfect, my brother. Thank you so much. I think that's perfect to even end on. Like I said, in closing for me, you know, I don't give medical advice here, so I want to remind everybody, we're not giving any medical advice or any professional advice. Go talk to your doctor, of course. But that message is home to me, Mike. It's, you know, it's the community, like we're saying always. It's that family, that support structure, and even times like now, especially times like now with the pandemic and the lockdown, this is when we're reminded that we need community, we need support, and we just keep on spreading the word and spreading the love. Thank you for spreading the love, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Carlo. And there's one last thing.
Please.
There's a quote by, I think it's Jack Cornfield, and he says, "Tend to the part of the garden that you can touch." You know, so I love thinking about worldwide change, peace on earth. But if we all tend to our individual gardens, the part that we can reach, I think that we have a shot. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I like that.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it, and everybody is going to appreciate this, I hope. Thank you.
Cool. I hope so too. Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you.
All right.
Let's say bye to everybody, and we'll say thanks for listening. Say thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.